Spurs making more moves. Is that it? It's only July 11th.
Still need a shooter and still need a minimum big.
So Zach Collins not doing it for you?
No, I mean he does, but they need one more because they lost Mamu and they lost Charles Bassey, and they need another.
Still Barlow.
They lost Barlow.
Yeah.
I was just looking at the 40,000-foot view. You get the top 40 free agents, and only 12 or 15 of these guys have signed so far. I mean, how long have we been into free agency? This is the slowest free agent market that I remember. Certainly, I'm by no means chalking my memory up to being, what it was, but I just feel like the Spurs are doing this so patiently that they're going to get somebody by default. There are going to be some players, decent players, that are still available at the end of this. Maybe there's a free agent out there right now that wants to go here, wants to go there, that, maybe they get squeezed out of that picture, and maybe by default they're going to be able to grab. I don't think they're anywhere being done, or anywhere close to being done, I should say. So I don't know. I just think it's all working out. The patience has been a virtue, and it's paying off.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think one key to why you're not seeing them pull the trigger, I think there's a couple of deals out there that they're still waiting to see what happens. I was told if Markkanen was to sign an extension, then they might be inclined to give Utah what they're asking for in return. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's less than – I think it's like 90-10. I think they're still conceivably trying to move Keldon. And then if they don't, then they can split that $8 million mid-level into two $4 million players. And you can get pretty good veterans on that at that cost.
Does Keldon have a place on this roster right now? Like I don't really see where he fits in anymore. You have Harrison, who's going to take the small forward spot. You have Julian Champagny, who's going to fill in at that small forward spot too, and that's where Keldon thrives. So I don't really see where exactly Keldon's going to play on this team, except for an energy guy off the bench.
Yeah, especially when you add Castle into that mix on the wing. And Barnes.
Not that I don't like Keldon, and
we all do.
Not that he doesn't fit on this team. It's just basketball wise,
he might have more value to get you a similar talent who plays a different position.
Correct.
Plus, and it's the contract too. If you can move the contract, then now you're talking about a lot of other variables that open up.
Right now, who would you rather on your team, Keldon Johnson or a knockdown shooter? You know what I mean? Like you need the shooter more right now than you do a Keldon Johnson.
Yeah.
What I think is it's so nice to have job security, because Brian Wright there's no threat he's going to be fired. They just lost 5 seasons in a row. There's no threat he's going to be fired. Same with Pop. It's so nice to have to be able to plan for the future. Would Brian Wright be trading for 2031 pick swaps if he knew or if he thought he had to win this year? Absolutely not. That's just not how the Spurs operate, though. They don't cycle their head coaches in and out. They don't cycle their front office in and out. They're not the Lakers. They're not here to try and appease one player.
You got to win now if you want to keep a job.
Exactly. That's not how they operate. So it's so nice to see we'll take Harrison Barnes. You guys want to win now. How about a pick swap for 2031 too? How about we throw that in, because you guys could suck in 2031 and we think we're going to be pretty good in 7 years.
So I got a real good explanation from someone in the Spurs organization on the pick swaps and something called the second apron. It's real in the weeds for you.
Yeah, we don't
salary
have to get into
guys.
Salary cap stuff.
But here's the deal. By the time Wemby is really good, years 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in his career, they're going to be paying Wemby what the Celtics are paying Jason Tatum, which is $78 million a year. Wemby will probably be the first $100 million a year player, right? So when you are paying that and you pay another couple of good guys, you're going to go into that second apron of the luxury tax, which means you get penalized on draft picks. You won't either get one or you're going to be good like they were for 20 years, where you're picking at 28, 29, 30 in the draft. These pick swaps are there so that when they can't pay anybody, a good example of KCP at Denver. Denver won, they got all these guys, but they can't pay KCP because they're paying Gordon and Joker and Murray and who's the next best guy? There's 4 of them.
Oh, Michael Porter?
Michael Porter Jr. They're paying all those guys, so they can't pay KCP, so he leaves and goes to Orlando. So you have the pick swap that might be the number 3 pick in the draft, who's going to play on a rookie scale deal. So they're loading up for those years when they know they're going to be cap strapped in a small market.
I also thought it was interesting what we heard on the Hoop Collective podcast. So I heard this a little bit earlier this week. I don't know if it was Tuesday or whatever it was. Brian Windhorst, Tim Bontemps, and Tim McMahon all talking on the ESPN's Hoop Collective podcast, talking about the Spurs and where they think this team is going to go. I thought that Wendy used a really, really interesting term right off the bat.
They're going to fit in, and they're going to help the Spurs be competitive next year. And I think that's critical for the development of...
How competitive are they going to be?
I think the Spurs could sniff around the play-in mix in the West next year. I think they could...
I said this the other day before they acquired Barnes, and I'll say it again now. I use the word semi-bluff. I think it's a semi-tank. What did they do with the 8th pick? They traded it. Like, this is a team that could have gone super young, drafted 4 and 8, played Stephon Castle, ton of minutes rookie year, played whoever you take 8, ton of minutes rookie year, with Vassell and Wembanyama, taking your lumps and then going into the draft. So they didn't. They've sort of split it.
Yeah.
Cashing in for the future. And I think
keeping all their asset powder dry.
Right. So they're exactly right. So Barnes has 2 years on his contract. Chris Paul signed 1 year on his contract. And they've come out of the summer with more assets than they went into it with. They trade for 2 firsts from Minnesota, or was it a first and a swap?
First and a swap.
First and a swap from Minnesota, and to get a swap from Sacramento. They come out holding more assets and looking at Victor going, we're better, with a little wink and a smile, with maybe Harrison Barnes and Chris Paul available to trade deadline.
So I think that what those guys said right there is interesting. The word semi-tank, or the phrase semi-tank, I think that's wrong. I don't think they're semi-tanking. I think they're building slowly, and that's what we've said all along. They're not. You can't say a team that's trying to win 40 games is tanking. That's the complete opposite. From going from 20 wins or 22 wins to 40 wins is the opposite of tanking. So I don't understand how they're saying that this team's semi-tanking just because they're acquiring future assets and that they're still trying to acquire players. That's how you build a team. I don't understand what that means.
Yeah, I think Wemby's just upset because he's the guy who pushed that narrative that Wemby wants to win now. Of course he does, but the Spurs aren't going to deviate from the plan. And Bontemps has always just had a thing for Pop. He just doesn't like him. So I don't know. I think they're off a little bit. I think the Spurs. Well, I know the Spurs were in the Paul George talks, and so was that tanking? No, they just weren't going to overpay. And once it got to a 4th year, they bowed out. But had they been able to get Paul George in for a 3-year deal at the max money that he wanted, they were willing to do that. And that wasn't going to be soft tanking. But they're not going to overextend themselves.
Yeah, I think when I hear from anybody at ESPN that the Spurs are under pressure to win now, I think what they mean is the Spurs are under pressure to win now from ESPN, from Turner, because they weren't happy that first game that they're playing on national TV, and they know, the league does, that they've got this global entity with Victor Wembanyama, and they get their butts handed to them on national TV, and they actually have to cut away from the game because it's so bad. The league needs the Spurs to be good with this guy so that they can put him on TV, but nobody's going to watch them if they're losing by 30 points a game. So, again, there's always an angle, I think, on some of this stuff, especially when you're talking about, where some of these things come from. But make no mistake about it, the league wants the Spurs to be good again for global reasons, if not for, making the NBA better.
As much as they want Bronny to be good?
Oh, my.
Dude,
don't even get me started on that one.
We could do a whole podcast on that, honestly.
I'm so sick of the Bronny stuff already.
Everybody is but them. So where's it coming from?
How do you sign up the number? Sorry, we'll spend 1 minute on Bronny real quick. How do you spend $7.6 million and give $4.4 million guaranteed to the 55th pick in the draft when other players in front of him, like you had to get to the 31st pick or the 30th pick to make it anywhere near that as a draft pick? Like, that is so insane.
True. Last year there was a guy in the 50s that made the same kind of deal. I saw an article that compared him. It's not that outrageous for where he was picked. The guarantee for the 4th year is a little odd,
It's sort of outrageous.
It's pretty outrageous.
Here's what's outrageous.
He wouldn't have gotten drafted if
that
he would have brought
they
his
spent
son.
this much time talking about him on the talk shows, and that they're trying to convince us he can play. Like, tell me that he deserves to be there because of what LeBron's done for the league or for the Lakers, and that it was a solid by the Lakers to LeBron. Great. I got no problem with that. We were watching the Spurs Summer League team play the other night, and Mark Jones of the Kings radio was doing the NBA TV broadcast. He had his daughter doing sidelines, and she was doing the sideline reporting, and, I don't want to be too tough on her, but obviously she was very inexperienced, but she got that gig. Nepotism's all through the league. All the assistant coaches, kids,
Look at Joe Buck.
You can go, it's everywhere, right? So, but I get the
Joe Buck.
I know. I mean, Joe Buck's good at his fight. No, Joe Buck's good at his job.
Yeah.
But
he got his job.
Got his opportunities because of his
It's
father.
everywhere, right? So it's Thanasis what's his name? Antetokounmpo. Yeah, they both got drafted by the Bucks. But don't tell me. But nobody told me they could play. They're telling me LeBron's kid can play, and I know he can't play dead in a Western. So don't tell me he can play.
Did you see after I don't know if it was his first game or his second game, Bronny's, ESPN made a graphic and it said 21 and then really small font said minutes. And then it said 4 points. And then it said 2-2, making it seem like you shot 2 for 2, but it was assists.
Yeah,
rebounds.
21, 2 and 2. Yeah.
I was like, no, that's not his stat
But again,
line.
at some point, everybody's going to be able to see with their own two eyes what's going on here, and that the money is driving this. And it's summer league, so who really gives a what? But again, all you have to do is look at the Spurs roster, which, by the way, you see the wholesale changes between California and Las Vegas.
Yeah.
They saw the same things we were.
So we're going to talk more about Spurs Summer League on Monday. There was a lot to get into that we missed over the last week and a half. So we'll get more into Spurs Summer League Monday. As far as the Spurs go, I like the moves. That's all I can say.
I do too.
That's all I can say is I like the moves. They're going to be a better team, and they're not semi-tanking. I don't
Better
buy
than
that.
standing pat.
All they're doing is not letting the media and letting other people outside of the organization accelerate their timeline.
I would say they're in the mix for 9-10 play-in, 45 wins at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Warriors last year were 46 and 38, something like that, 46 and 36, something like that.
Play-in.
Yeah, and they got in the play-in. I would expect the Spurs to do
something like that.
If it's 46, they probably miss, just because that's a pretty high bar to go from 22 to 46. But if the West recedes a little bit, gets to about 40 for the play-in.
The X factor that nobody's talking about, the improvement by Wemby. Remember, he didn't get great until about 30, 40 games in. And you look what he's doing in the summer. Oh, my goodness.
You're just impressed by that back to Evan Fournier block. That was a goaltend.
Ridiculous.
It was a goaltend.
It was a goaltend. I'm talking about as a feat of athleticism.
Still, you're right. All right, that's all we got for today on the Sneakers Cleats podcast. We went a little long, went all over the map, talked about circumcision, so that's nice. Any comments, actually, before we get out of here?
What's your shirt say, Don?
The red bar.
Tell me about it.
If you know, you know. Highway 30A, Grayton Beach, Florida. It is a world-famous establishment that serves the best crab cakes in America and is a really cool place. You would love it. The whole place is kind of dark, and it's got like red Christmas lights inside.
Oh, yeah.
And it's got pictures of
That's me.
That's your motif.
pictures all over the wall of old rock bands from the 60s, psychedelic. It's kind of a
It was actually
it's a lot like the art here.
That's what Bob's living room
It's a
looks
hippie
like.
hangout.
Any other questions or anything like that?
Hey, just along the lines you were talking about a number of wins. Robert Smith, who today we've had a ton of comments, not so many questions, but lots and lots of comments.
Love comments. Keep them coming.
And Robert Smith, who is always on watching us.
Hi, Robert.
Hi, Robert. Thanks for watching.
Hey, Bob.
He says,
Shout out Tom Guerrero.
and Tom is watching. He said
Shout out Bert.
already. Next season, I expect 20 to 30 plus wins. So
Like more than last year.
I don't know. It says 20-30 plus wins. So I think that's.
I think that would be
Okay.
it. So what if I was to say this? What if I was to put the over under on wins? 41 and 41 is even. So what if I was to say over under 40 and a half?
I would take the over under if you set it at 32 because I just saw somewhere that I think Chris Paul has a bonus kicker that kicks in if they get 32 wins. So I'm going to go with 32 as my over and under, and I'll say over.
Okay. What if I put it at 40.5? Would you say over or under right as we sit here right this second? We'll do this again as we get closer to
I would say over, but I was so scarred from last year when I picked 40 and they won 22.
I as well.
Yeah. Actually, don't ever go back and listen to those September episodes of Sneakers and Cleats, please, because I really don't want to resurface all of those wrong predictions.
I'm going to say I'm wearing black and silver glasses, and so I'm going to say under.
You're going to say under 40.5.
Maybe thinking 38.
Okay.
But I think they can win 45 games.
Any other comments real quick before we get out of here?
I think they're capable of it.
That's called hedging your bets, ladies and gentlemen.
Plan the parade now.
Anything else, Bob?
We're good.
We're good? All right. That's all we got for you on Sneakers and Cleats today. Remember to download, rate, review, subscribe.
That's why I don't gamble.
Me too.
Tell a friend, tell an enemy. I should have said this at the beginning. Sorry, Bob. We will be right back here on Monday talking more Summer League action. Until then, everyone have a good weekend.